have a nice time, dear? Do you remember when you told me that I might have such strong feelings about a boy that it might be hard for me to decide what's right to do? Yes, I remember. It was something like that tonight with Jeff. The feeling between us kept getting stronger and stronger. Our way home we stopped and parked. And then things seemed to happen. Till we nearly...
Virginity is one of those things where when it gets mentioned in a film, there are certain outcomes that seem almost guaranteed. It's kind of like how if somebody shows a gun in a film, then you just know that gun will be fired.
I am dead terrified by the idea of losing my virginity.
You don't have to have sex to be sexual.
Lust is something to which we would all like to succumb.
Let's just be honest here. You can masturbate every day if you want, 5 times a day.
God invented the orgasm. That shocks a few people.
I will not lose my virginity until I'm married.
What comes to your mind when you hear the word virgin?
Someone who has not had sex using a penis and a vagina.
Very timid, shy. It's not able to look, persons in the eye for too long.
Like a goody-goody.
Yeah.
I think for a long time there's been a stigma attached to virginity because people thought people would only be virgins if no one would be interested in them.
People are scared of virginity because it's just that big, ugly word that says you are a loser, you've got no friends. To be a virgin is to be an outcast, almost.
Anybody can be perceived as being a freak just because they think differently than everybody else.
If I'm abstinent, then that somehow makes me impotent.
It was cool when you were younger because everyone's doing it. And then it's not cool when you're older because nobody's doing it.
I think the media certainly portrays virgins as, square, somehow stifled, sexually stunted. I hope I'm not that way.
My name is Peter Chataway, and I'm a writer primarily involved in film criticism. Most of my writing tends to be in sort of pop culture, primarily film sort of vein. Anytime religion and pop culture come together actually is particularly fun. Why is virginity fascinating? It's unusual and it concerns sex, and unusual things in general are usually very fascinating to people, and sex is always endlessly fascinating, even if in this case it's sort of non-sex.
If you talk to people of the older generation, they'll tell you that they were brought up saving themselves for marriage and it was really taboo if you didn't. And today it seems to have turned around a lot, where people expect people to have multiple partners before they get married. When I was about 11, I remember laying in my bed thinking that would be so cute if I was still a virgin on my wedding day. Not knowing if it was at all possible, but thinking it would be something I'd like to do. And as I got older, I realised more and more things that just convinced me that I wanted to be able to give myself to my husband completely and say, here I am with my bow still attached. No one's ever unwrapped me before. I'm all yours. From the age of 14, everybody knew that I was waiting till I get married. If people asked me, I just told them. So that sort of thing was spread around pretty quickly. All my friends knew, everyone in the school probably knew, and every guy knew. The guys obviously talked about such things. Virginity, to me, shows respect. It has value in that people know who they are, know what they're worth, know that they're loved for who they are, not what they put out. There's an innocence. There's a knowing but not knowing. There's there's something about it that is hard to put into words, but it is special, and it is sacred, and it is undefiled. I think society is going to get a shock, and people are going to start turning around and realising sexual freedom, sexual liberty, free sex, free love is not free at all. There is a huge price to pay. And I think people need to consider emotional purity, like being faithful with their whole heart, not just a certain part of their anatomy, being faithful with who they are and with who their future spouse is. slightly different mentality, but I really believe that's the best way to be.
A lot of times our culture's so into rushing into things, and I think that's just another thing I don't want to rush into. I'm 21 years old and I go to University of British Columbia, and I think among students, the general view is that virginity is a thing of the past. The big M word. I don't want to have to be the one to talk about masturbation, but there's such mixed feelings about it. It's one thing parents will never talk about. Because it's such a private part of your life and because it's such a personal thing, you're always scared to ask someone, you know, what they do or what they feel about it, because you're scared you're going to be like that alien that does something that's totally different. Guys talk about masturbation all the time. I mean, we have other words for it. I'm sure I don't need to list the multiple phrases that people use, but, you know, jacking off or fixing yourself or cleaning the pipes or any of that stuff. Excuse my language, Mom. But I think a lot of times people do that, or a lot of guys will use masturbation as a way to, you know, relieve themselves of that sexual stress, especially when it's so rampant in society, so rampant on TV, and everybody's talking about it. But you just realize that if sex isn't, you know, your main focus in life, like sex is not the focus of my life, and it's just like anything, you know, if guys are dwelling on sex and are not having sex, they're gonna have to get rid of it in another way. For me, I don't dwell on sex and I don't dwell on the fact that I have to be in a sexual relationship. So masturbation or pornography or all that stuff isn't a part of my life. You have a guy and a girl in a room, and it's so common just to do whatever feels good. And to have the guy, of all things, say, you know, hold up, this is not something I'm into. I remember just the confusion and a little bit of almost hurt that was involved with that, because this certain individual had no clue why I would wait. Of course I deal with those temptations, you know. You'd try and, you wouldn't be yourself to say you weren't tempted to have sex or experiment, and, you know, and then you see the flip side where you see a great couple who have waited until marriage, and it just gets better, and you hear those testimonials about, you know, your Christian parents, or even people who aren't Christians who waited until they were married to have sex with each other, and you just hear the great things that happen. Very rarely do you ever hear about a story of people who waited and were really upset. I've never heard a story like that. But the way the world's going, chances are you probably would have sex if you weren't a Christian, just because everyone's doing it. But I'm so thankful that I'm where I'm at.
I'm no cold fish, that's for certain. I don't think very many people are. I think most people's sexual urges are really about equal. It's just what you do with them that matters. My name is Maggie Robertson. I'm 24 and I'm a virgin. Well, I made a decision to remain a virgin until I got married when I was probably about 14. As the years have gone by, though, particularly in the last few years, as I've gotten older, those decisions become much harder. It becomes much harder to stay a virgin. Since moving to New York, there were certain times when I felt like my virginity was something that I hadn't mentioned, but was definitely present, and I had to out myself. You're just exposed to a lot of people who have had very different life experiences from yours. That's certainly been my experience in New York, is to be with people who are remarkably different from me. And it's fascinating to hear about their sexual stories, their sexual histories compared to mine are very different. But actually, I've discovered there are a lot of virgins sneaking around, hidden virgins that nobody knows about and who will admit it to you once you've admitted it to them. And so we form a merry little band of virgins marching around in New York City, unknown and unseen, so.
There is certainly an assumption that characters usually should lose it, and that if they haven't lost it by a certain point in their lives, then there might be something wrong with them. Like in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Phoebe Cates tells Jennifer Jason Leigh, "Oh, you're 15, you should have gotten rid of it by now. You know, I lost mine when I was 13. Well, not just movies, but also in other things too, like Friends. There was an episode there where they found out that a certain character, I think it was Ross, had only had sex one second with the one, by now, ex-girlfriend. And the other guys in the show find this kind of weird, and one of them says he's a freak, and there's that sort of assumption.